Welcome to Unfiltered STEM with the YPB. If you can, grab a drink, maybe a snack, and let's get started.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of the Unfiltered STEM podcast, and this is the first episode of season 2, which is kind of mad thinking about it. So hi, I'm B. I will be your host for today, and today we're talking about kids, whether we want them, whether we don't, what we're thinking about it. I'm joined by Fiona, Susie, and Lucy. So if you all want to go ahead and introduce yourselves, tell us what you think about having kids, give us a little spiel.
Right in at the deep end. I'm Susie. I'm an electrical engineer, and I believe that women should be able to have a career and have children. I would like to have children at some point in the future.
I'm Fiona, I'm a chemical engineer, and I totally agree with Susie. Women should be able to have both, but I am undecided if I'm going to have both or not.
Hi, I'm Lucy. I'm in aerospace engineering, and I think we all absolutely share the same sentiment there. Kind of similar to Fiona. I don't know. I can only talk for how I feel right now, which is I wouldn't want a child at this stage of my life, but who knows how I'd feel 10 years on the line.
I feel left out now. I'm going to reintroduce myself. Hi, I'm B. I'm a software engineer, and I definitely don't want kids, but I'm not going to let that shade the rest of this podcast. I actually think women should just have a career, and that's it. I'm joking. Full closure. So I'm going to pick on Lucy first, actually, because she went last in the first one. How did you decide your stance on having kids? Was there like one specific moment, or was it sort of just a gradual feeling over time?
Probably a gradual thing for me. There's so much pressure, and there's that expectation makes me like a child want to rebel against it. And every time someone's like, okay, when are you gonna have a kid? When are you gonna have a kid? And like, oh yeah, of course. And if I say, well, I'm not sure if I do, because we shouldn't just assume everyone will have children, because there's loads of different reasons people might not want to or might not be able to. People are so patronizing. They go, oh, of course you'll change your mind. Oh, you'll never know love until you have kids. And it just makes me want to rebel against that and say, well, actually, no, just to prove you wrong, I never will. But there are kind of societal and personal reasons that I'm not sure myself. I think there's just so much in the world I'd like to see changed first, and I don't want that pressure on myself. So that's kind of why I'm undecided for now.
Susie, how do you feel?
To be honest, it's not really a decision that I've felt I've ever made. I think I've just always known that it's something that I want at some point in my life. And not that time is not now. But I hope that in future it's something that I can have. So yeah, it wasn't really a decision. I think it's just something that I've always felt that is going to happen. I hope it is.
I probably would say I'm at the stage of making the decision, or like making sure I'd be making the decision for the right reasons. Because I think when I was younger, everyone would have just boldly assumed I was definitely going to have kids. People always said I should be a teacher because I'm good with kids, and I did coaching with kids as well. And I feel like it was kind of always an assumption, and I went along with it because I was good with kids. But I think, yeah, getting a bit older, being, in early stages of a career, being in a world where everything costs so much money and it's getting worse. And yeah, like Lucy was saying, you're not sure like what out in the world, what you want to see first. Do you want kids to see it? I feel like I'm just want to make the decision for myself and make sure it's not a decision that other people are putting on me. And there's so much to think about when you put it in that frame that you've never really considered before.
I for sure agree. And I forgot to preface this. I did originally mean to put this in the introduction, but we've actually been kind of not warned off of, but all of us have had people saying it's not necessarily the most sensible choice in the world to air your thoughts on having kids, or like share your plan on having kids. So I remember I was told when I was looking for grad jobs, don't, or like indicate in your interview that you're not planning on having kids anytime soon. And like indicate to the interviewer. And I remember actually doing that. And I probably did it in a really clunky way thinking about it. It was probably really embarrassing. Cringe. But we've also been kind of told, actually, it's not necessarily the most sensible idea, just in case like a future employer sees this. And it's a really interesting, I don't want to say taboo, because it's not necessarily taboo because women are generally assumed as to be having kids and that's part of their plan. It's probably more controversial to not be follow along with that. But it certainly seems to be taboo talking about it so openly, like the decision part of it, rather than like the having them.
Kind of feels like a damned if you do, damned if you don't. Because if you say you don't want kids, people are like, well, why not? And you're questioned on it. But then if you say you will, then people are like, well, you've got to factor that into your career and there's going to be consequences of it. And it shouldn't be a situation where you can't win. To be honest, it shouldn't be a situation where you could ever lose. It just feels wild to me.
And it's such a big decision as well. So, Susan, I'm going to pick on you first because you've said you do want them. So how far back have you been sort of looking at making considerations for having or wanting to have a child in your life?
Yeah, I mean, like, I've definitely thought about it since the beginning of my career, and I've definitely set certain goals in my head that I want to achieve within my career before I feel that I can then have the kids, because inevitably there is a pause that happens for, yeah, I would say for the way that I would like to have a child, it would require some sort of pause. So I've definitely thought about that since the beginning of my career, about when that can happen. And that changes all the time as well. As I'm going through my career, my goals within my career change as well. And so, with everything, it's always at the back of my mind, like, okay, if I move job, I would want to be in that job for a certain amount of time, or I would want to have a certain amount of experience within that job before I could then think that I'm competent enough to then take the time out to be able to kind of come back, after having a child, and to kind of know what I'm doing, or slot back in the way that I would want to. So yes, it's something that I'm always thinking about, and yeah, it's always part of the future plan.
Have you started making any sort of considerations towards it at all?
I'm kind of the opposite because I know it takes that much thinking, and that's a bit scary. Because I've been in the same company since I graduated, almost 5 years now. So in that sense, got the, you'd be comfortable coming back in. But the career bit for me also goes alongside what quite a few of us have, that I am very far from home and very far from family and support networks, and fitting in the career goals with the financial side, with the support system, it feels like those things are so distant sometimes that it's like, oh well, that's a plan for later. There's so many other things to do first before you can plan for that yeah, I kind of push it off a bit and think, I need to do other things before I can do the planning, rather than planning around or like having them as the milestones to then go, here, the plan is ready. So kind of avoiding it sometimes.
So I distinctly remember in a past life when I was looking at applying for grad roles and stuff like this, and kind of it was getting to a point where I was I'd been with my then partner for quite a while, and I was almost like having to look at jobs and like count back in my head how long I'd need to be there, because I think that, like, I don't know if it's an urban myth or something, it's like, oh, you're supposed to be there about 2 years to get full like mat leave. And I was stressing myself out. And bear in mind, I've now decided I don't want kids, so this was all a ridiculous thing to be stressed about. But I was like counting back, how long would I need? What point do I do? How many promotions do I want to get? How far up the career ladder? Like, in terms of finances, I remember my dad telling me, like, nursery fees were more than mortgage payments, and like a mortgage is currently my goal. I can't afford nursery fees on top of that. Are you kidding me? No way. And then, like, you made a really good point actually about the moving away from family, because in our Mother's Day podcast we did quite a while back, we spoke about actually how important it was to have support networks. And I've certainly got like friends around me, and I'm sure, like, there were plenty of people around me who'd support me, but my family live quite far away. Like, they're about a 2-hour drive. And I think that's such a different issue now than it was like 20 years ago, because 20 years ago people didn't move as much as we seem to be doing now. I think all of us actually live quite far away from family now.
And I'm a
Okay.
7-hour drive from family, so
Yeah.
yeah.
Susie is next door.
Yeah, So I'm in a very privileged position where I live very close to like my in-laws and my parents. I guess it's like, is it an informed decision? A little bit, yeah. I mean, I want to be close to my family, but also when the time comes that if we're lucky to have a child in our future, then I will full on be leaning on grandparents to help with the childcare. And I know that I'm very lucky to be in that position where I can do that. And I was lucky enough to have my grandparents look after me when I was a child. So again, that was something that was important to me, you know, in the decision of where we would live. And so that part of the decision, which makes it more difficult for other people, is kind of taken out of the equation for me. So I know that I'm in a privileged position to be able to have that support network around, you know, for when that time comes.
Fiona, this is not on the book, so sorry, I'm prepared for this. So, Fiona, if you were thinking next couple of years, do you want to have a kid? What would you then think about moving closer to your family or like to your partner's family or anything like that? Or do you think you'd be
Like
paying
it's-
the extortionate nursery fees, which are worth it? They do really good work, but they are
Yeah.
still expensive.
Like, it's definitely one that's crossed my mind enough times because I'm far from home, but I'm very far from home in terms of driving. Partner's also far from home. Like, even if you take out the financial bit, it's more like just having people that love you nearby. Like, it's not that you don't have that out of friends, but like having family miss out on that. Because I know it'll be, for our generation, definitely a lot of leaning on grandparents for childcare because it's expensive, but there's so much bonding time I think you would miss out on. Like the support network for yourself. But yeah, even for a child, like to think, would you want to raise a child when they're nowhere near their family and they see them a few times a year? I'm aware that it's a decision that would have to be made, which is again why I try to avoid it sometimes.
Something that I was kind of told recently, I think it links quite well into your point earlier, Susie, was around the kind of the skills that you actually gain whilst on maternity. So someone was saying about, yeah, okay, you might have, let's say, a year career break, but the skills that a lot of people kind of think, you know, all the skills that they're building in work and they're therefore getting ahead of me. But how much people actually learn and then put into practice in 9 months, in a year, in work, versus what you've just learned, and all those, they might not be engineering skills, but soft skills you just learned, physically growing and raising a human being, and a whole new level of communication and empathy. And it quite literally makes you into a new person, and you've grown a new human being, and the skills you've learned from that are actually really invaluable for your career. So it shouldn't just be seen as just a big career gap where you're not learning anything, because it's actually like incredible the amount you are learning. So it's also quite a good point just to think about on the other side of what you were saying. It's I think something that often goes like
It
under
also
mind, doesn't it?
it leans into what we always say about like having diversity of people, and that's not just necessarily like different backgrounds, different like the way people look, but it's also like different experiences as well. And that's ongoing, that doesn't ever change. Like everyone's experience of life is totally different and valuable.
Something that I've actually noticed with people in my work who have gone off on maternity or paternity leave and then they come back, is that I've seen in some of them a shift in that they come back and they are able to set better boundaries with their kind of like work-life balance. I guess because they really value the time at home maybe more than what they did before. So I think that's something I've noticed that happens to a lot of people when they go off and then they come back. They come back with better boundaries and a better kind of outset of what a good work-life balance is for them, which is a really positive thing.
Yeah, I guess if you're able to set boundaries with a really angry little human, you're going to be able to set boundaries with people in work. Like,
Exactly.
it's such a good learning
Yeah.
point. they can just be so angry. If you can master that one, you can master anything.
Sorry, you're making a really good point, and I just interrupted it with.
I stand by what I said. Yeah, it's funny. I never actually consider a career gap when I'm thinking about career planning. I never think about, like, it's actually never entered my head, will I have a kid or will I not? I think the way I view it is, I know where I want to be when I retire, and my plan is to get there, whether I
Hell or
have.
high water.
Yeah, I'm getting there. That's my goal. I'm determined. I will be there. Check me out in 50 years. I'll be where I said I want to be.
You will.
And that's regardless. Like, I might have a year out because I'm having to have a big operation. Like, you never know what could come your way, and it usually gets put on me to consider a career gap more than me consider it. Whenever I've had career conversations and like career planning conversations, people are like, oh, well, you've got to think about when you're going to be out for a year or so having kids. I was like, well, actually, that's, again, I wish I made that point. That's if, we don't assume if I have that. And someone that said to me once, oh, give it a few years and your ovaries will be screaming at you.
Oh,
God.
As
And
well,
these
when
are the
people are-
expectations that it just makes me want to rebel against it. It's so
when people
toxic.
say
It's
these
sat there
things,
in
they
a...
don't even consider if you maybe couldn't have kids, and they're saying those things
Yeah.
to you.
And that's like
Yeah.
such a big point to him. Like, you don't know what is driving my decision. To say
Mhm.
things so dismissively is wild to me.
do you know what? That's such a good point, because I think I got diagnosed with endometriosis earlier this year, and they told me 25% of women have it, right? And it makes conceiving harder. And I think there's PCOS as well. PCOS, I think, has got a similar amount. It's a similar stat. And that, again, could make things harder. So it's actually, not only is it just a bit rude and a bit nosy to be asking somebody this or telling somebody they need to consider this, because you're literally telling someone, like, number one, I don't think anyone is telling a man. Like,
Exactly.
nobody is telling my partner, oh, when are you considering kids? Nobody is. That's
No.
not a conversation. But for some reason, people think they are entitled to ask women about this, or female presenting. And actually, you don't know what's going on behind closed doors. I've chosen just not to have them. I don't want them. Could be, well, and nobody would know, or I couldn't have them. It could be like I had and you wouldn't know. And by asking me that, that's actually really triggering, really horrific, and really upsetting. And it just makes it not like an open space to talk about it. But, oh, sorry, that ovary screaming thing really threw me off.
Your point as well about nobody's asking a man these questions is so true, and nobody is telling a man, oh, you better not mention online if you want kids because you might not get hired, or because that's just the thing that kind of annoys me about it, that it's so targeted towards women. Nobody's wondering when they're hiring a man, I wonder if they're going to have kids, or do they already have kids, because we still live in a world where the woman in a relationship is seen as the primary caregiver. So I want to live in a world where both parents are seen as equal caregivers in a relationship. I think we're moving slowly towards it. I have seen like small baby steps, like extended paternity leave and things. There's a long way to go, but that's the goal. No, it wasn't. What did I say?
Baby steps.
Baby steps. So, well, it's also, and I did quickly try and find the stat. I can't find it and also pay attention because I have a one-track mind. There's a stat which is that we know women's pay goes down. There's a motherhood penalty, and it's women are more likely to take part-time leave. And that is, that's one of the things we have to make a consideration. Are you going to take part-time leave? It's super common. I've got a lot of part-time workers in my company, and that's not necessarily for childcare. It could be for health reasons. Could be they just prefer working. I know some people who they come into work at like 12, work till 10, and that's what they're happy with. But women are more likely to take part-time roles. They're more likely to take lesser paid roles because they're more flexible. And men actually they're seen to be more respectable and more trusted because they've got kids, despite the fact they're in the office more. And it's a really, I was going to say interesting dichotomy, but actually it's just a bit crappy. It's the double
I think that was
standard.
in the authority gap.
Yeah, I should have remembered that exact stat really, but I should put it into
Yeah, no,
names.
that was pretty much it. That was
Get
pretty
through,
much
yeah.
it. Like the perception of a man versus a woman after having children is like complete opposite.
Yeah, I read the stat, and again, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was to do with how women start facing more bias, or there's like there's different types of biases, and there's one about I think it's called like maternity bias, and women start facing it once they get engaged, because once they're engaged, it's okay, now you're going to get married and you're going to have children, and it's that this is what the expectations for your life are.
Yeah.
And it's just those expectations that bother me. And it's just like you were talking about them being, I mentioned at the start, you don't know why people are having making these choices, and it also shouldn't matter if I'm choosing to not have children for a personal reason, for a medical reason, for whatever reason. It shouldn't matter, and people shouldn't only accept my decision if I'm not having kids because I can't. It should just be respected regardless, and that's what bugs me. Like, if I say, well, actually, if someone say, oh, well, I can't have kids, then they go, oh, okay, I'm sorry. It should you just shouldn't be asking these questions at all. It's completely a choice, and that's why I always try, and if someone says, oh, when, actually if, you just don't know.
The thing is with that maternity bias that you're talking about, Lucy. So I guess it's related to people considering you for opportunities and things. They maybe discard women. But you were saying that starts when you get engaged. So that bias is assuming that all engaged women are going to have children as well. So even a woman who is engaged and knows that they don't want to have children, they are still subject to that bias as well.
Yeah, because they're on the road to motherhood, so they should be. Well, they shouldn't be, as in this bias. It kind of says that they won't be given as many like big projects because well, soon they're going to be taking time off to, get married and have babies, and it's that road. Bizarre.
So frustrating.
So I know we were saying nobody asks our partners when they're having kids, but we're going to talk about it. So Lucy, what's your dog's last name? Is it yours or your partner's?
My partner's ridiculous.
My cat, he's asleep over there. I won't show it because there's laundry every time I head out of shot. My cat has my last name, and that's as far as I'm going to get. Fiona and Susie, whose last name would your potential future child, have?
So I feel quite strongly about, at least if I ever get married, keeping my own name, which has probably come because my mum kept her own name, and never really thought much of it apart from like one or two odd interactions. I went to Catholic school. I did once have a teacher try to refuse me my report card because it wasn't my last name. But for the most part, it was just my mum kept her last name, and I never thought much of it. And I do remember the realization that I had as a child when I realised I had my dad's name. Yes, I don't know. It's come up. I feel really strongly about keeping my own name, but in terms of like what name a child would get, it's really challenging when I feel so like personally tied to my identity and mine. But then, do you choose one? Do you do both? Does it always work? I've definitely got friends talking about it with like friends that got married recently, and I've got one friend double-barreled her name legally, but keeping her name at work, and you end up with quite a lot of different options because it feels different in different places as well.
Yeah.
Susie, what are you thinking? Because you recently did get married. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Kept your name, didn't you?
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, I kept my name. My partner kept his name. We both wanted to keep our names, and neither of us wanted to change them. So, yeah, I've always wanted to keep my name. For me, it's an identity thing. Like, I feel that my identity is tied to my name, and I personally feel like I didn't want to change that, because I don't think my identity should change when I get married. It's a total personal choice though, and I think, as you say, Fiona, there's lots of different things you can do, and everyone is entitled to make their own decision on that one. What name would our future child have? Well, I don't really know.
It's going
but
to depend on who files the birth certificate.
possibly.
It's a rock, paper, scissors for it.
Do you know, I love what the Spanish do. Like
Yeah.
the woman keeps her name, the man keeps his name, and then the children get both. So I love that. We would possibly do like our child would get my partner's name, and then they would have my name as a middle name, which is what I had. I have my mum's maiden name as a middle name, because I don't feel so strongly about what a kid having my name. For me, I wanted to keep my name because it's an identity thing for me. But that child's their identity is given to them. Well, their name is given to them at birth, and then they'll make their own identity. But yeah. So for me, I don't feel too strongly about a child having my surname. So yeah, we'll see. Maybe we'll just do the same as what I had.
Perhaps we should revert back to old ways and like have your last name be the place you were born. Like Leonardo da Vinci, like Leonardo of Vinci, I'd be like B de Bristol. Probably not on T, probably just of. But
I think,
like
yeah.
I feel like that's at least like that's something that's the child's own thing, not like
Yeah,
a choice that's
Similar.
been made for them.
Yeah, similar to the Spanish one. I think some cultures take like half as each name and put them together.
Mhm.
So yeah, there's different ones in all different places, and it's quite funny when you look into it and start realizing how much of a bubble we all live in. When you go, oh, everyone takes the dad's name, and you realize that's probably just a chunk of the Western world, and even that, not
Yeah,
even that much
exactly.
of the Western world. Yeah.
And that's why it annoys me when people say things like, "Oh, you didn't take your partner's name. When you have children, it's going to be so difficult going through security, airports, and things." And I'm like, there exactly as you say, Fiona. There's so many different ways to do it all across the world. Like, not all airports in the world are westernized. Like airports will be used to people from all different countries coming through security.
Most multicultural place ever.
Yeah.
You also just don't know how life's
Exactly.
gonna work out. My mum changed her name to my dad's name when they got married, and then I had that name. Then they got divorced, my mum got remarried and have a different name to me anyway. So, like, swings and roundabouts sometimes.
So, fun fact: my parents got married. My last name is Lloyd. That's my dad's last name. My mum double-barreled because she'd had her stepdad's last name. Don't quite know how that happened. I actually haven't asked, but she had her stepdad's last name, and it took her until she was old enough to be able to change it legally to her actual dad's name, her bio dad. And then she got married like 4 years later. Like, not very long at all. She was like, well, I went through all that effort. I don't want to do it. So what she does is, generally, she's known by her double-barreled last name. But legally, she is known by Lloyd. And that is specifically because of airports. And thanks, because it's a nightmare. Or it used to be, certainly like when I was a kid.
Yeah.
But now I think it's a little bit easier. But I remember this was a discussion we were chatting about in the marriage episode a while back. And I really would want to do one on like talking about names in other cultures as well. So if anyone's interested in that, do let us know, and let us know which cultures to look into as well.
Yeah. And the last thing I'll add to that is just that you said that was a nightmare when you were younger, and my auntie, she didn't take her husband's name, my uncle's name, and he does say, oh, it was a nightmare, whatever. But I just had a conversation about what all people around us are doing just now. I haven't taken my partner's name. Fiona's friends have double-barreled. Like, one's double-barreled, one's not. People are putting their names together. Like, the admin world is going to get used. It's going to get used to this.
I mean, I don't know, because I feel like the admin world hasn't even got used to women changing their name, because I've heard from people who have changed their name how difficult it is. And that immediately put me off because I hate paperwork. Also, I like my name.
Yeah.
But yeah, the admin world needs to catch up. And if it doesn't, it'll get left behind. Oh. So, still on the topic of partners, How did you have this conversation with your partner? I was friends with my partner before we were actually together, and we discussed that we did not want kids. So this has never actually been a conversation, apart from we went to his barber's recently, and his barber mixed him up and said, "Oh no, you were chatting about how you wanted kids last time you came here," to my partner, and it almost started an argument.
Imagine what a way to go out. I don't remember the first time I had the conversation with my partner. We've always just been quite open about it and have spoken about what we want in life, what we want out of our relationship, because I'm not here to mess about. I've been together for too long for that. Just kind of having those conversations. Like I said, I don't remember the first time we had it, but just being honest. And he's a bit like, yeah, I don't know either. So we're kind of just like winging it through life, and we'll have to figure it out one day. And kind of he's in the same mindset of, well, yeah, right now that wouldn't work for our lives, what we want, where we want to be. It just would, it wouldn't happen right now. But again, don't know how to feel in 10 years. So maybe in 10 years, we might have to have a really awkward conversation when one has changed their mind and one hasn't. But for now, we're in the same place. And for me, it's just about trying to be as honest and open as you can. Otherwise, it leads you to really, really awkward conversations down the line. I know so many people that both have like really opposite views and aren't discussing it. I'm like, at some point, you're really going to have to figure this one out, because it's been years and years and you're just getting further away. So it's just, being open.
Having been there with the awkward conversation where I had changed my mind and I decided that actually it wasn't what I wanted, it was just what I had been kind of told I was going to do. It's awkward as hell. It is awkward as hell, and it is actually so much better to do it sooner rather than later, because at least that ex could then find someone who was interested in that and can kind of build a life then that he's happy with. But I'm happy with my life now.
Yeah, I'm not here for awkward conversations. I'm just going to air it straight away. Put it on the table.
Yeah, no point stewing on it.
That's the way to do it. Don't waste any time, Lucy.
Haven't got time to waste. I'm a busy gal.
Yeah, fun fact, this episode took 2 months to organise because we were so busy, and I got sick like twice. Sorry. So Susie, how did you and your partner decide?
I honestly don't remember. I don't remember the first time we spoke about it. I think we've been together for 8 years, and we've always been on the same page about what we want together. So it's always just been really easy. I don't remember the first time, but we've always, as far as I can remember, seen the same future together. So, just speaking. We speak really openly about what we both want as well. So it's always been really easy, which is great, which is lucky.
So Fiona, saved you for last intentionally.
Yeah, so I feel like my job as the on the fence person is to be really like floaty and not say anything concrete here. Because for mine, like I know where my partner stands. He literally said it on the first date that he wants. But we'd been friends for several years before the first date, so that's okay. But yeah, I kind of, I'm a bit of a contradiction sometimes. You will not make me do something I don't want to do, but at the same time, I can be so blunt, and at the same time, I will keep my cards close to my chest and then just flip it into conversation. Just to see how people react when they're not expecting it. I do that occasionally. I think I probably did that on this topic a bit, of not really mentioning it because it is a big conversation to have, and me thinking to myself, oh, do I not? Do I really know? And I think I could have put it out there a bit as I'm thinking about it. I need to make sure it's the right choice for me. On the fence doesn't mean no, and it doesn't mean yes. It just means if it was yes, have I made it a yes for the right reason? Have I thought about everything and just making sure it's not because it's expected? And yeah, it just feels like a bigger one, a conversation to have as well around like, okay, you want kids or you don't want kids, but how are you going to have those kids? Especially when living away from family, both families, really different cultures as well. I think a lot on the fact that I was very Catholic, very clearly not Catholic anymore. My I have very strong feelings against the church. The church did not respect me, so I will not respect the church. But partner's family is Hindu, so really, really different backgrounds. And yeah, I think it's a long conversation to figure out if things are practical and if things make sense. But yeah, I kind of did my standard and slipped it in there and wanted to see what the reaction was. But it was kind of okay, I'll think about it. Yeah.
I guess it's kind of a hard conversation to have when, and obviously you don't know where you stand, because you do know where you stand in that. You just don't, you don't know kind of a concrete answer, yes or no. And that does, I think, add another element to the conversation, doesn't it? Because then, especially if they know, they're like, well, I know, so that what does that mean then? And what if I know if some of my friends had kind of a similar situation where their partner knew they did and they just still weren't sure, and they were struggling to navigate through that conversation, because it's like, well, what if you then decide you don't? What does that then, like, where does that leave us? But then are we just having the conversation for nothing if you decide you do? And it just adds another kind of like element of complexity. Again, it's just, hi, it's the cat.
Yeah, but yeah, I definitely like add. And also, I think as well, sometimes with the conversation, if you're not a staunch no, people assume yes. Like people, we've talked a lot as well about people assuming yes anyway. But if the conversation comes up and you don't straight out go, absolutely not, no way, never happening, then people will assume yes, and they won't stop the question. Oh, have you made sure this is what you want? Have you made sure that you've made the decision for yourself? And I still feel quite strong about making the decision for me before making the decision for me as part of a couple.
Yeah, so, I absolutely get that. And I think I agree when you say I don't know, people are like, oh, they'll make that decision for you, you know.
Yeah.
And that's a big part of why for so many years I was like, absolutely not, never doing it. Just because I was trying to like rebel back against those. But yeah, I agree. For me, it's just I'll just have to see where I'm at. But I do agree that people, they'll make that answer for you. They're like, I know what you're thinking.
Yeah. People
sure you do,
just got out of other people's lives, don't they? Stop making assumptions about other people. Like, just get on with your own life, for God's
sake. Sorry, I'm just so entertaining that you have invested interest in me. Just stop.
But it's a massive decision. Like, it is pretty much the only thing in life you can't undo. Like, you can.
That's murder.
Yes, I was thinking murder as well. I watched too many murder documentaries.
Legally, it's the one that you can't undo. Like, you can't. It's. Sorry, I need a second.
You're absolutely correct. And I think that's where I always come back to. It should be a choice. I don't know why we assume everyone's going to have kids. It should absolutely be a choice, and I respect whatever choice people make. But people should go in understanding the full, like, I don't want to say benefits, but like benefits and consequences kind of thing.
The weight of it, it's huge.
Yeah, like you're bringing in humans as well. It shouldn't just be an assumption that you're going to do that. And
but also, I think it leads to a bit of a bigger conversation, does it? Because people are just like, well, you should know. Why should you know on something that's so big? Like, I don't even know fully, like, what I want for breakfast each morning. I'll, like, I kind of feel like this and make it. You know, maybe that makes me sound really flaky.
You've got to make breakfast for another person. You've got double the decisions.
We joked before this. Lucy has had a stressful day, and we joked that at least you don't have a child asking, saying, like, I've been saying this, like, oh, I threw up, or oh, I've got a school project tomorrow and I need ingredients. I did that to my parents all the time. I'm
that's
so
what I
sorry.
mean. I don't want me. Like, I was awful, you know, and I was always going, oh, Mum, like, you know, at 8 a.m, I need all these ingredients that you haven't got. I know the shops are shut. Sorry. I don't need that stress in my life.
My poor dad once went to 5 different shops to try and find sliced blanched almonds because there was some, like, so European shortage. I really needed it. I left it last minute. He did not find them because they were just completely out. So I can't remember what happened with that. But, like, I think if you
I
say
don't
to
think I'd seen an almond until I was about 18.
That's a really specific type of girl.
what do they feed you up north?
Certainly didn't
Whole
get any
almonds.
almonds anyway.
No
Nothing
almonds.
exactly.
Walnuts or death. This is where it's like your house is an allergy household or something, and I'm really sorry. But I think by saying like you should either be yes or you should either be no, it puts so much pressure on it
Mhm.
that people are likely to default probably just to yes because that's the like expectation. And I feel like actually when you start saying no, it's like it's people always like Lucy said before, they will always tell you you're going to change your mind. Oh, just wait a couple of years. No one's told me that everything, and quite frankly, I'm glad because I would just make the vomit face at them. Yeah. But because everyone assumes that women have babies and that's it, it means that I would then feel forced into having kids I don't really want. And I'm not saying I think I'd be a good parent. I have younger siblings. I've always been really good with kids. I know how to raise a kid, and I have a really good support network around me. It's just not what I want in my life, and that's totally fine. Like, I'm so happy for anyone who does want to have kids. I've got friends who are like wanting babies, having babies, have had babies, and they're so happy with their decision. But by telling people it either needs to be yes or a no immediately, like they must know from birth, from like when you got like kids playing with Barbies, oh, is that your baby sort of thing? I think it just forces people down a route, and it like you should think about this. It is significant. It is going to impact your life to an unlimited extent. So stop trying to force your own opinions on people because they might make the decision that's not right for them, and it might not 100% resonate with them, and they might not be as happy as they could be.
Yeah.
And that's
Also,
your fault, ovary man.
also, I don't know if this is a bit of a sidetrack. It might be, but on the topic of making the informed decision and making it for yourself, I feel like there's so much more that we have access to now with the internet that I don't know if anyone else ever gets it, and you get the odd video on TikTok or Instagram reel or something, and it's people telling you, the realities of a lot of it that you don't get taught. And it's, this thing will happen in pregnancy, your body will alter like this, postpartum, this thing happened to me, and actually turns out it happens a lot. And it's quite scary to find that there's so many things, like medically, scientifically, that are known to happen, but people just don't talk about it. And the thought of saying, like, oh yeah, I want kids, like I'm going to have children, going through the process of being pregnant, giving birth. If something not great was to happen, and at the end of it, I found out that all these people had had children, went, oh yeah, we knew about that, we just didn't tell you, I would be really angry. Like really,
so
I'd feel
much that
really
people
hard
don't talk
done
about,
by.
isn't there?
Yeah.
Like, it blew my mind. My friend
Yeah.
recently, she recently had a baby. My point was actually that she's a midwife, so shout out Erin if you're watching. And the thing she told me, this has probably put me in the never camp. Like, the thing she told me, like when she was studying midwifery, I was like, oh my god, never, that's never going to be me. And these, like, just the stories that she came out with, and how casually she say it, and then because it's like grossed me out, she thought it'd be really funny and kept telling me more, and I was like, how are we, like, how is this so normal? And there's this there's this song, and this is gonna be so weird if you heard it, but it's like a parody song about how we've never studied the female body. Has anyone heard it?
No.
Oh my god, I'm gonna send it to you all afterwards.
Okay.
And this is what it always makes me think of, and it's like, we've never really studied the female body.
Yes. No, I get it because I'm quite open about it. But, like, I weirdly get asked it quite a lot. I don't know if it's because I chat about like my younger siblings a lot or anything like that. But people will ask me, like, straight up ask me, and I'll be like, no, don't want them, don't fancy them, just not my thing, right? And sometimes people like immediately try and tell me like, oh you should, oh it's a love like you've never known, blah blah blah, all this sort of stuff. By the way, I'm sure it is, but I have a lot of love in my life. I'm happy, leave me alone. But a lot of people will tell me all the bad stuff. They're like, oh, it's a good thing you're not having kids because this happened to me, or this happened to a friend of mine, or this happened, and oh, I nearly died during pregnancy. That's the thing that happens. Like, I have a friend of mine who literally, like, her heart stopped during childbirth. And she was like, yeah, apparently it happens.
And this is, like, I think part of the issue here isn't just that it's not shared, but it's just that it's like like how do I describe it? But it's like the song, the fact that there isn't that investment in essentially like women's health and just understanding the whole female body. That's to me like the root cause issue here, that we just don't understand enough, and it isn't therefore publicized because we don't know. And things like the fact that a lot of medicine has never been tested on women, like it's only been tested on men, and like it's just this whole issue
The
that
dosages are wrong for us.
yeah, and it's just this whole minefield of an issue. Like, for me, I just think it's utterly crazy. And is that possibly part of my consideration? Is that one of the things that I'd like to see changed before I would say yes, I want a kid? Maybe. It's just like it's such an issue, and it's to me it's so much more than like pregnancy and childbirth. It's like the whole of it. It's the whole of like women's health. Bizarre.
Not related, but what I do want to say is like there are so many women in the world who don't get to make the choice as well between having kids or not having kids. And I just wanted to make a comment that we are very lucky to be in a position where we can make that decision, and we have access to contraception and good health care, and that we can we have the power to make the choice of whether we want to have children or not, and we are in control of that because we live in a world where not everyone is able to do that.
Yeah, that's a great point. Something I love that it always seems really great is maternity classes, and when the parents come together and it's just like girlhood, and they make all these friends, and I love that side of it in which everyone supports each other. And we kind of talked about earlier about how it's so much more common for people to move away now, but then there's that community with that they all come together in this shared experience, isn't it? I love that, and that always just seems like a lovely community of people supporting each other. And almost every person I've met that, and every woman I've met that has had a child, has always said that community of the other women having as kids has just been incredible. So I think that's always such a nice part of it, to have that. It's a sisterhood.
Yeah, it's kind of like the motherhood equivalent of us here. Like, this is your professional sisterhood, and then you'll have the equivalent of like everyone going through the same thing. Yeah.
Okay. I love this. This is really cute.
Yes. I don't know that I've got a whole rounded point here that I'd like to make, but just since 50% of the room is queer, I don't know if I'd like to I don't know how to round it out of just to say, I feel like part of me being on the fence and thinking, I really need to think about this and make sure the decision is right for me, is that I am queer, I am in a relationship with a man, but I feel like, it's a relatively recent relationship compared to, I think, the rest of the room. And
depends on when you count the anniversary, really, but
But for most of my adult life, when thinking, do I want kids, do I not? That was a really big consideration for me of, well, depends on who my partner ends up being. If I'm with a cisgender man, then it's a much easier decision in terms of the practicality and the logistics of, you can have a biological child.
We assume.
Yeah, okay, yeah, very good point, yeah. So the base assumption of logistically biological child is easier, but part of me thinking, right, I need to make sure the choice is right for me, is if I was with a woman, or basically not a cisgender man who could naturally have children, then it would be such a bigger decision and process to go through that you'd really need to make sure it's the right choice for yourself and for the person you're with, because although the end product is a child and a loving family, the route to get there would be so different, and would probably be a bit more scrutinised even now, when everything is much better than it was, say, 10, 15 years ago. There's still a lot more to go through to get to the end point there. So it's definitely one, it was always in the back of my mind that I would need to make sure the choice was definitely the choice I wanted.
That's an amazing point, actually. I hadn't even considered that. And I am the other part of the 50%. Okay. When I was originally thinking about having kids, and that was very much like it was just kind of assumed for me. It was very much linked to the partner I was then with, who really did want them. And it was only when I broke it off, well, it was kind of, it basically ended because I kind of decided I didn't want it, but actually it was a good point of me sitting there saying, okay, well, how is my life going to look? And it was so funny because originally I thought of this whole life plan of like house and kids and dog and all this sort of stuff, and like how much does that change and how much does that alter depending on the partner you're with.
Well, I got a cat. It's wildly different.
Now I've got now I've got a cat. I still want the house, you know. My little siblings can come around, it's fine. But yeah, no, that's such a good point of like thinking about who your partner is, and like that actually does have to change your considerations quite a lot. Yeah, mad. So that was a really good conversation just around whether or not we want to have kids, and I think it's more of a starting point than anything. But it is worth noting that we're all white cisgender women. Our jobs have all got pretty decent mat leave policies, and we actually have a lot of freedom to make these decisions. It's like we said earlier, it's not always something that people get. It's not always something people have a chance to. What we would like to explore is we are looking to have more conversations with people who've gone through this or people who face difficulties with this, and that'll be coming kind of further along in the year. But for now, thank you so much for listening. Have a lovely morning, evening, night, afternoon, and we will see you in the next one. Thank you.
Yay.
Only Susie never waved.
Sorry, I'm waving.
You did.